but she is extremely well connected to Indian culture. She actually is a volunteer in Indian Heritage Center in Singapore. So she's extremely well connected with Indian. But I did not know that her connection with Indian culture is so deep till I started talking to her. Even living in Singapore, she has actually got arranged marriage. So I want to ask Vidya, how did that happen?
Well, I'm just really grateful my husband isn't here, so I can be free.
But we are getting recording.
Well, I would say that to a large extent, I always felt that that's what would happen. In a sense, I grew up in a fairly traditional family. I didn't realize how traditional they were until I went to school and had every other Indian I knew was not like my family, who was constantly at the temple and constantly making us dress up, put oil in our hair, and you're constantly in denial about going to India. So every holiday we would be taken to India for a 30-day trip, and I would be resented thoroughly because it will supposedly be a holiday for after exams. But I used to resent it. But getting arranged marriage was something I thought that would just happen because it was just easier. To a large extent, it was just easier to let everybody just do the work, and then you just turn up. And that's precisely what happened. I just turned up. I did nothing. I made no effort at all, and I thought that was quite a cool deal. That if you just do nothing and everyone's sort of patting you on your back, that should be good enough, and they'll leave you alone after that, and then possibly you could do what you want afterwards. So there was this small game that I sort of made myself think what it was, and I guess I would say the sentimental part of it is that it made me happy to make them happy. So I would say that that's why, because many of my friends asked me, I was the first among my cohort of friends who got married, and I had male friends who didn't even have a tie at the time, because it was 14 years ago and we were just fresh out of school. So they were all asking why now and why so quickly. And I'm like, that's the way it is. You've known each other for so long, that's just how it goes. And there's something about wanting to make others happy that sort of makes you feel that this is not necessarily the wrong thing to do. It is not an alien thing to do. And there's so much celebration that we have within that whole dimension of marriage and families and relationships. We pay so much attention to it. We value it so much. And then the fact is, the way you see your family members calling their relatives from India turn up, and all kinds of people end up in your house, and you're like, I don't even care who you are, but whatever, just knock yourself out, So it was just one of those happy periods where everyone just went with the flow, and I think my husband felt the same way, because you get a sense of family by sort of going with what it is that everybody wants, and you hope that it will work out, and you sort of have faith that it should, and you make that commitment to it. And just to raise that in your chapter on arranged marriage, you mention a lot about commitment. And I see Nalini I think it is this Nalini who's the character in the book, right? She talks a lot about commitment, and she's not so bothered about love. It seems like. So she's right. I mean, she's right. The love bit is like, yeah, whatever. But the commitment bit, I think, is what girls understand. That's what they see around them. So perhaps.
I must say, you sound so Indian. If I pick up anyone who is born, brought up, and lived in India for so long, they would probably sound exactly the same.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because when you grow up in Singapore, you're constantly struggling with identity. Because for most of my growing up years, you're constantly having to define your race, define your community. Every form you fill up, you have to write your religion. And I went to a Catholic school, so you always knew that you were not Catholic, because everyone would know you were not Catholic. And you're like, yeah, and it constantly comes up. And you have to adjust to what everybody else is all the time. And you're constantly asked about how come you don't look Indian constantly? You know, and you're justifying your the way you look, the way you sound, your culture, why you have to go home by 10 p.m. Then I'll just say I'm Indian. You know, that's how you get the boys to not ask you more questions. Just say you're Indian. You know, we're Indian. And that's it. Because then they're like, yeah, okay. Like, why do you have a curfew? Then I'm like, I'm Indian. Of course I have a curfew. You know, like, why can't boys call the house? My dad's going to pick up the phone. I'm Indian. So it's like, you know, after a while, it becomes too complicated to answer. And a lot of the times, when you're growing up, you don't know the reason. You just know it's like that. It's frowned upon. Certain things are frowned upon. So you sort of go with the flow. But at the same time, I seem to sound like some ideal child. But I don't think anyone in my house thought I was ideal. Anyway.
So you also, yesterday when we were talking, you told me a small story, which your father told me. So do you want to share that story?
Yes. My dad was a storyteller. He was someone who didn't tell you directly, whenever he wanted you to not do something, he wouldn't say no. He would just give you a story. And most of the time, you just knew that the no was coming at the back of the story. But today this particular story has got some profound meaning to me, but because I have now started telling the story as I am about to right now. So, and this story is about getting married, and he told me the story when I was about 19, 20. And he was someone who was brought to Singapore when he was 10 years old, and he lived always close to the sea. Because in Kerala they had grown up close to the sea. He was someone who enjoyed living by the sea, and he enjoyed being close to the sea. So this anything to do with sea will always be some part of his story. So this particular story is about why arranged marriage is better than love marriage. So that's the context. So he tells me that you and I are standing at the shore of the sea, and there's a boat. There are two boats in front of us. There's a boat with a string and a boat without a string. You are going to soon tell me that you do not want to go into the boat with the string. The string is held by me, okay? Because you want to go off on your own boat. So I'll be telling you to take the boat with the string attached, because I will know where the boat will go. Because even if I let it go, I will be able to guide the boat as it goes out into sea. But there you are telling me that you're going to go out into the boat that is without a string. Fine, go ahead. Take the boat that doesn't have the string, go into the sea, and the sea is not going to, it looks very calm right now, but it's going to be, there's going to be, waves, there will be wind, there will be thunderstorms, all kinds of things will be happening. And there's no way you're going to be able to reach out. I'm going to be standing on the shore, I'm not going to get into the boat. And you didn't want my help at the shore. I told you to stay at the shore, or I told you to hold on to, tell you to go where I asked you to go. So you're going to be on your own if you do this, and there'll be nobody to turn to. There will be no one to help you. There will be nothing to go for. You have to navigate this all by yourself, and the ship might capsize, and you might drown. So I remember I rebutted and I said, what makes you think if I went into the boat that you are suggesting that you can save me? Then he just stopped for a second and he looked at me like I was thoroughly insane. And all he just said to me is that he just reached out his hand and he said, but I can always tug that string. I'll just tug it. Sometimes I will gently pull. In certain occasions, if the winds are too strong, I will give it a good yank, and then you will be back on the shore. So, whatever it is, you can turn to me. So, of course, I hated the story thoroughly. Thoroughly hated the story, but the irony of life is that I did what he would have wanted me to do, because he passed away before I got married. So it's funny that today I look at that story not from a physical point of view, but I look at it as an emotional point. That string is an emotional connect. That's how I look at it. So, but it's not because of this that I had an arranged marriage, but it's just something philosophical, I would say. Yeah.
Thanks, Vidhya. I think that was a moving story.
But I wanted to ask you something, Vivek. This thing about arranged marriage, this curiosity that we Indians seem to be creating with people. I mean, we seem very interesting to a lot of people, which I think is a good thing. You know, because we seem complicated, we look very diverse, we all don't look the same. We all have so many different stories, we come from different parts of the country, we eat different things. And I think for the most part, whenever these questions come to me nowadays, I find that, do you find that it is an intrusive question, or do you find it's a celebration of your own identity?
I think earlier if these questions are asked for the first time, they do seem like intrusive questions. They did seem like I was put in a spot. They did seem like I was being pointed at. But as I started mingling with different cultures, and as I started anticipating these questions, as Manoj said that he knows that if he meets somebody, they are going to ask this question. So as I started anticipating these questions, now I started probably enjoying them more.
So now would you say the travels that you've had, these interactions with different people, is that the reason why when you have these quiet moments when you're traveling, that you feel that you have so much to put down?
Completely.
Okay.
If I would say that if I wasn't traveling, this book wouldn't exist. This book has come into being only because I have traveled such a lot, and because of this, because of this, I would, every 15 days I would get an outside-in perspective about myself. Every 15 days I would interact with different people and realize how different I am from them.
So
that probably helped me to write this book.
Would you say that that this sort of makes you like understand who you are? Does it make you question your value system?
It does. It does. So basically, when you look at yourself in the mirror, then you actually know who you are and what you look like, and that probably helped me to understand myself much better. So looking at yourself from the eyes of different culture actually helped me define and become more confident about who I am. I learned to accept myself with all the shortcomings I had, with all the irrational things which I had to justify I had, and that probably is the essence of being a true global Indian.
One last question. Do you feel that going forward that you will probably do a deeper study in the sense that you will interview people of different ages, people who have maybe lived in who are Indians who are living in another country for a very, very long time, whether their perspective changes over time, some kind of more scholarship in the way you approach this subject?
That is something which I haven't thought through, but I think the essence, I would say that it is very difficult to go on the scholar route, because that route has very well defined milestones, very well defined processes, and there are so many scholars who are trying to probably answer these questions themselves anyway, and they haven't found really good answers. Why Indians don't eat? There is no real answer to this. So I would say that I would work more on these areas, talk to people informally, and try to understand the psyche, and then absorb that and put it in my own words. I think that would be the way I would take this forward, rather than going the scholar route. I'm not that kind. Okay, thanks Vidhya, thank you so much.